recovery here in Texas. This weekend he'll be talking at the Big Texas Rally, but before then, we get the honor and privilege of listening to Brian tell his story. Brian, welcome to Oxford.
Thank you very much for the introduction, although we could have just stopped at drunk, druggy, and crazy, and that would have been perfect. That's me. Good. My name is Brian Cuban, and I am a person in long-term recovery.
Hi, Brian.
And for me, that dates back to April 8, 2007. Drugs, alcohol, and an eating disorder. Yes, guys do get eating disorders. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I was out shopping, just buying some knickknacks and stuff, and I was wearing my favorite t-shirt. It says Party Sober on it. This green t-shirt that says Party Sober. If you want to know how much of a favorite it is to me, ask my fiance sitting over here. She has to tell me when we go out, Brian, we're going to a restaurant. Maybe you don't want to wear that t-shirt. Maybe you want to put that t-shirt in the washing machine maybe once a month. Can you please wear something else but your Party Sober t-shirt? And I was wearing that t-shirt, and a young lady came up to me, noticed my t-shirt, and she said, "Are you speaking at the Oxford House Convention coming up in a couple weeks?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she's out in this audience somewhere, I won't embarrass her, and she said, "I want to thank you for speaking. Your story means so much to me." And to that young lady, I want to say thank you for the hospitality you showed me in reaching out, and in doing so, you empowered my recovery at that moment, because it's all about those little moments, isn't it? So thank you. And those little moments, and getting to those little moments of recovery has been quite a journey for me. And I want to take everyone back to June 6, 2007. We're going to take the hot tub time machine back there. The Dallas Mavericks, the NBA team Dallas Mavericks, yeah. We're going to the NBA championship for the very first time. My brother, yes, that guy's my brother, Shark Tank, and we won't talk politics here today. He had bought the team in 2000s, and they'd had some success, but this was our first trip to the big show. As you might imagine, I had some opportunity to get some good seats to that game. I also had the opportunity to get tickets for friends. So I got 2 tickets. Do you think I gave them to my friends? No. Maybe you think I sold them on eBay for some astronomical amount. No, because that would have been disrespectful to my brother, the team, and the city. I took those 2 tickets and traded them to my cocaine dealer for $1,000 in cocaine. Selling them on eBay was disrespectful, but trading them to my cocaine dealer was perfectly acceptable. The quote-unquote insanity of addiction, right? So my drug dealer shows up, he delivered, with this big Ziploc baggie of cocaine. I give him the money, he gives me the cocaine. I run upstairs to my desk in my office. I pour it all out on my desk like I'm Scarface, ready to put my face down. Of course, I had to sample the wares. I tried some. Cocaine had long stopped giving me a feeling that I had been chasing for decades. I panicked. I got paranoid. Are those the police I hear outside? God, peek through the window. I have to hide my cocaine. I take the cocaine, I put it back in the Ziploc baggie. I hide it, I get in my car, and I drive up to Home Depot. At Home Depot, I buy a saw, a drill, and electrical faceplate outlets. I drive back to my house, I go to each closet in my house, and I'd take the drill, bzz, 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 and put a fake electrical outlet in each closet. Like the DEA, the police, and the drug dogs have never thought of that one before, right? So I put all the cocaine in all these electrical outlets. My paranoia increases. Are those the cops I hear? The paranoia of addiction, of cocaine addiction. And it wasn't just drugs. At 18 years old, as a freshman at Penn State University, I developed anorexia, an eating disorder, transitioned into bulimia. By 20, I had become an alcoholic as a sophomore at Penn State University. By 27, I was a cocaine addict. By the time I was in my mid-40s, I became suicidal. Not one, but 2 trips to a psychiatric facility, Green Oaks here in Dallas. 3 failed marriages, 1 more, I get a free set of steak knives. I actually am having that 1 more, she's sitting right over there. And finally, recovery in April 2007. Quite a resume to put on, quite a legal resume, right? When I applied to that law firm, here you go, I'm a drug addict, I'm a coke addict, you know, I'm depressed, clinical depression, hire me. Wasn't quite that way. So how did it get that way? How did I get that way? Of course, we all have a story. Mine goes all the way back to childhood. I was the middle of 3 children, a baby boomer. Mark was the oldest. And as you might imagine, Mark was kind of the outgoing, the entrepreneur, selling garbage bags door to door. I remember the newspaper in Pittsburgh went on strike. He drove to Cleveland, got their newspaper, came back and sold them on street corners. So he had entrepreneur in his blood from the time he was a teen. Our youngest brother, Jeff, was a jock, nationally ranked wrestler, partier, beer parties, big man on campus, good-looking kid. I was the middle child, very shy, classic middle child syndrome. I internalized everything that was said to me in a negative way. I wanted acceptance so badly. And unfortunately, I had a very difficult relationship with my mom. And I'm going to talk about that as part of my environment, but I want to make it clear here to everyone that I do not blame my mother for what happened to me. Mothers do not cause eating disorders. Mothers do not cause drug addiction, okay? Or any part of the family, but it is part of the environment, and environment correlates with certain things, so I'm going to talk about it. There was a lot of fat shaming in my household. I used to love to eat Chef Boyardee ravioli. Do they still have that? I would eat it out of the can. I mean, I just loved it. I would come home from school, my mom sold real estate, and she would come home from selling real estate, and she would see that, and she would say, Brian, if you keep eating like that, you're going to be a fat pig. And these were the things my mother's mother said to her. And these were the things her mother said to her. These things are often passed down generationally in families. My mother passed it down to me. And as you might imagine, somebody who was already shy, that kind of made me depressed. So I began to eat more Chef Boyardee ravioli, and more Chef Boyardee ravioli. And I got to be a bigger Brian, and a bigger Brian. And as what often happens when people start changing how they look, they get heavier. The bullying started at school. The fat talk, the fat teasing, the fat shaming, a term we didn't have back then, but the words are the same, and the words are hurtful, regardless of when it happens. All of that culminated one day in what I call the day of the gold pants. My brother Mark had given me a pair of these shiny gold satin bell-bottom disco pants. You have to remember, this was back in the mid-70s. Who's heard or seen Saturday Night Fever? That's right. So this was the disco era. Mark even taught disco, believe it or not. And so he gave me these kind of John Travolta style disco pants that fit pretty good on him, and he looked styling back then. I mean, he was ready to mac the town. But I was a heavy kid. They didn't fit too well on me. My butt looked like 50 cats in these tight, shiny gold disco pants. You know, you have to jump up and down and put the water on them. But I didn't care because my brother Mark gave me those pants. He loved me. It was his proof. It was proof that he loved me, and I was going to wear those pants to school every day. Just like my party sober t-shirt. I wore those pants, and they were tight. I'm walking home with some kids from school one day. The bullies, the kids who made fun of me, the kids who called me a fat pig, like my mom. You know, okay, they must have spoken to my mom in my mind. And they started pulling at the pants. One of them said, "Boy, he looks so fat in those pants. I wonder what they would look like off him." And the next thing I knew, about a mile from my house, these kids physically assaulted me. They tore off my shiny gold satin disco pants, tore them into shreds, and threw them in the street, down in my Fruit of the Loom tighty whities. That incident was so traumatic to me that I could go to Pittsburgh, PA, and show you exactly where it happened. They went on laughing. They thought they had done an incredibly funny thing, and that goes on today. I pick up the shreds of the pants in the street, cover my privates and my Fruit of the Looms, and waddle on home. No one stopped. People stared. No one was home. Thank goodness. My mother wasn't home. Mark wasn't home. And I took those pants and I pulled out all the garbage and stuck them in the middle of the garbage down the bottom and hoped that no one would say anything. And no one ever did. But I was ashamed. I was ashamed that, one, those bullies had validated everything my mother had said to me, that I was a fat pig, and when I came home with bad grades, she would call me a dumb bunny. I was not a good student. And so I was this fat pig and dumb bunny who couldn't stand up for himself to bullies, and I was ashamed. And it was around that time that I started to see myself in a different way. And I started to develop what is known as body dysmorphic disorder. And what body dysmorphic disorder is when you take a small or non-existent defect in your body and you exaggerate it in your reflection to the point where it affects your ability to function, quote unquote, normally in life. Some people get eating disorders. Some people use drugs. Some people drink. Some people have used plastic surgery. I hit all of those. And I began to develop this disorder. So I went on to Penn State University, and I was so happy to get away from my mom, get away from the boys. And my father drives me up there. It's this beautiful fall day in 1979. My father's helping me unpack. I'm staring out the window in my dorm thinking everything's going to be different. I'm going to be accepted. I'm going to make new friends. Everything's going to be great. My life will change from here on. And I make eye contact with this pretty brown-haired curly haired girl, standing in the parking lot with her parents and a couple of her friends. She looks at me, and I make eye contact. I start sweating. Within 3 seconds, I envisioned my whole life with this girl. We're gonna date, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have 2 1/2 children. That's my wife. But it wasn't a smirk, it wasn't a smile, it was a smirk. She looks at me, looks at her 2 friends, looks back at me and goes, "Ugly, ugly." I felt like I had been pantsed again. Now, I am not the first person who has had mean things said to them. I'm not the first teenager who has had harsh things said to him or her. Some people can just brush it off. Some people can laugh it off. I was not one of those people. I was somebody who was already broken, who already had a terrible self-image. And this was just kind of the final straw. And it was right there that I thought that I had no control over my life. What could I do to get control? What could I do to finally be accepted by the kids? Finally be loved by my mother? Finally have friends? One day go to a dance like the prom. One day finally kiss a girl or hold a girl's hand. I had to get control. Well, what did I have control over? Food. But I didn't want to keep eating because I associated that with bullying, and I began to restrict and restrict and restrict. And as a freshman at Penn State University in 1979, I became anorexic. Years before it would be in the national spotlight, decades before it would be talked about for men, even though 3 in 10 men today suffer from an eating disorder. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew that doing that made me feel normal. And that next year, 1980, I transitioned into bulimia, and I would not go into recovery from my bulimia until I was in my 40s, over 2 decades. I went on to a different campus at Penn State University, thinking again, now things are going to be different, things are going to be good, but I felt so alone. I felt like I would never be loved. I felt like I would never be invited to the football games and the beer parties. But what I did do was turn 21, and I discovered alcohol. Before long, I was an alcoholic as a sophomore, then moving on to my junior year at Penn State University. It's funny, when I talk to colleges, eventually, one smart kid will go, "Oh, you're not an alcoholic till you graduate." Well, let me tell you something. I was an alcoholic on the campus of Penn State University. I knew nothing about 12-step. I knew nothing about treatment. What I did know that was alcohol, for a short period of time, made me feel normal, made me feel like it didn't matter if I was loved, made me feel like it was okay to just isolate by myself. And that is how I lived my life as a college student at Penn State University. But I did graduate. I graduated as a functional alcoholic. I had kind of a gift that I could study for like a night before the exam and give the information back the next day and do okay. So I did graduate. Well, what am I going to do with my life? I didn't want to go out in the real world because I didn't want to have to admit to myself that I had a drinking problem. I hadn't admitted to myself. One day walking into a hamburger joint, and there was a rack of pamphlets that the 12-step groups put out, 20 questions. I pull out one of the pamphlets. I was drunk. Do you black out? Yes. Do you miss school? Yes. Do this? Yes, yes, yes. I'm just a college student. 2 points. Rimmed out. I would never play for the Mavs. Rim that sucker out. So what am I going to do with my life? I decided the most logical thing for me to do was stay in school. I decided I would go on to law school. Here was my thought process of going to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. I didn't want to be Clarence Darrow. I didn't want to change the world. I didn't want to be what we call now a social justice warrior. Back then, that was just lawyer. I just wanted to hide for 3 more years and not have to deal with my drinking and not have to deal with my eating disorder. Does anyone here have law school aspirations? If you do, let me give you a piece of advice, or if any of your children ever have law school aspirations, don't go for those reasons, okay? Don't go for those reasons. Go for good reasons, like you want to change the world. But I did go on to Pitt Law. And I graduated from Pitt Law by the skin of my teeth, because instead of going to class, I was drinking. I would go to class drunk. I would do what we call a moot court, and the lawyers here will understand what that is. It's a trial competition. I had to get drunk to be able to do it. My studying was going to the bars, getting drunk, and again, pulling an all-nighter before each exam. But in law school, that doesn't work, okay? Because they don't grade the same way they do in college. So you're competing with people who all did well. So you can't just pull an all-nighter. And I barely graduated. As a matter of fact, I have reoccurring dreams that the dean of the law school, when I try to get my diploma, is pulling it away from me. Give me that, and I wake up sweating. But I did graduate. So what am I going to do with my life now? 1986, I want to get out of Pittsburgh, repeating cycles. I decide I'll move to Dallas, Texas, because I can be with my brother Mark and my brother Jeff, who had both moved here, and their love would save me. I could move in with them and everything was going to be great. They didn't know my problems, but we were very close. We are very close, and being with them would straighten me out. Well, it was just like throwing gasoline on a fire. Boom! Because this was 1986, they're in their 20s and Mark's in his early 30s. They're out dating, they're out having a good time, they're out going to the clubs. I fit right in. I fit right in. And my drinking got worse. And in 1987, I discovered something that literally changed my world for a few moments. That changed how I thought about myself. That finally, for those few moments, I could look in the mirror and say, that person is loved. His mother loves him. He is not bullied. He is accepted. He will finally go on a date. I discovered cocaine in the bathroom of a hotel here in Dallas, Texas. And I instantly became a cocaine addict in that bathroom. Instantly. I'm sure there are people here who understand that process. It wasn't maybe, it wasn't what if, it wasn't, maybe I'll try this again. It was boom. I had to see that person again and again and again. I had to have that feeling again and again and again. And again, when I speak to people who haven't been through that, I say, look, anyone who tells you you cannot become an addict the first time is lying. Come see me, because I did. But in my mind, cocaine was it would eventually become the evil white powder, but at that time it was the magic powder, because it created a Mac Daddy Brian that was ready to rock Dallas, Texas. But when the high wore off, back came the real reality of where I was. Back came the depression. I had suffered from clinical depression since I was a teen, and it made it even worse. So of course I had to do more cocaine to try to compensate for that. Before I knew it, I was doing cocaine in the bathroom of my law firm. I was doing cocaine to have to calm my nerves to go in the courtroom. I was doing cocaine when I was working on cases for clients. That was my life as a lawyer in Dallas, Texas, as an addicted lawyer, as a cocaine addicted lawyer, and as an alcoholic lawyer. I finally became so despondent that I would never see anything but this horrific image in the mirror that would never be loved, that would never be accepted, that in 2005 I became suicidal and decided to end my life. And it was close. In the summer of 2005, my two brothers, Mark and Jeff, came into my house. I had a weapon on my nightstand, drugs everywhere, alcohol everywhere, and I was literally within that zone of using that weapon. I was very fortunate that someone who cared about me alerted my family to what was going on, because I had begun isolating from my family. I had begun hanging out with only people who did drugs and drank, because I was ashamed. I didn't want to be around my family so they could see who I really was and who I felt like I really was, this horrible person. So it was easier just to hang out with the people who did what I did, right? We understand that. A friend called them, shot them emails. Next thing I know, my brother Jeff's pounding on the door. Mark flies in from Los Angeles. They take the weapon, they gather up all my drugs. I'm like, did you check the outlets? I didn't tell them about the outlets. And they took me on my first of 2 trips to Green Oak Psychiatric Facility. Against my will, we're driving down there. I'm screaming, I'm angry. I'm not an addict, I'm not an alcoholic. Leave me alone. Mind your own business was the rant of the moment while they were taking me down there. They take me in with the attending psychiatrist and the psychiatric nurse, and once it's leave me alone. I'm not an addict, I'm not an alcoholic, I don't want to hurt myself. Hey, I'm a lawyer. I knew that my brothers couldn't do anything, but that doctor could. I don't want to hurt myself. Take me back home. My brothers are just like anyone else. They didn't know what to do. They had no experience. I'm very fortunate because my brother was making phone calls. I am a very fortunate person to have someone like that in my family. He was making phone calls to get me into rehab, and I said, no, I'm not going. Rehab is for junkies. Rehab is for addicts. I'm just having a good time. Really good time, right? Brian, we're at Green Oak Psychiatric Facility. Are you having fun? So they drive me back home. They had no choice, and we did what I call the Cuban rehab. Just stay in your house for 2 weeks and everything will be fine. They take my car keys. The moment they left the house, I called a cab and went down to my auto dealership and had a new set of keys made. They're not going to tell me what to do. That's fine, my drug dealer delivers. No problem. And so I hung around the house for 2 weeks, doing blow and drinking, just having my buddies come over there, putting on the show so my family would think everything's okay. Back out. Numerous failed relationships, numerous failed marriages, all because of my addiction, all because I was put so much energy into hiding my drug and alcohol use from them. And I was good. I had a JD, but I also had a PhD in hiding my drug and alcohol use. And so each of those marriages failed within 2 years because when you're putting that much energy into hiding who you are, no relationship can stand, right? It's just not going to work. Rather than opening yourself up, rather than being vulnerable, rather than allowing yourself to be vulnerable, it's the easiest thing for me was to just take the path of least resistance, which ultimately comes to your significant other saying, you don't love me. You're right, I don't. That's easier than being vulnerable and asking for help. And that's what I did, the path of least resistance, 3 times. Back out on the party scene, my law practice going to pretty much nothing because I was spending all my money on drugs and alcohol, out all night partying, not showing up for work, not showing up for court. Very lucky I didn't get disbarred. Very lucky I didn't have grievance filed against me. It wasn't because of anything I did, it was just the luck of the draw. Then, April 2007. I had met another girl. We had begun dating. She decides she's going to go away for Easter to see her family. I said, fine. I had been hiding my drug and alcohol use from her. Next thing I know, it's a day and a half later. She's standing over my bed. There's cocaine everywhere. There's alcohol everywhere. I'd clearly been unfaithful. There's a used prophylactic on the floor. I actually told her it was for a water balloon. No, that didn't work. But that's what you go through as an addict in denial, right? Whatever works, just throw it against the wall, right? Whatever works, and maybe something will be believed where you can just push it past, not have to deal with it till the next time, till the next water balloon, to the next high. She wasn't buying it. My next trip back to Green Oak Psychiatric Facility. She's crying, and I'm angry, as she had a right to be, and I'm thinking she's gone. She's actually sitting right over there, and we get married in 2 weeks. And I'm standing in that parking lot, and a couple of things occurred to me. One, there wasn't going to be a third trip back to Green Oaks. I'd be dead. And something else occurred to me. I thought back to my teenage years, to my relationship with my father. And I thought about something my father used to say to Mark, Jeff, and I all the time. He would say this to us in one form or another, at least once a month. He'd say, Wives may come and go. Well, yeah, for me they have. We hope they don't, right? We hope we have wonderful relationships. Girlfriends may come and go, and we hope they don't. And he's kidding, he's being tongue-in-cheek. But when push comes to shove, all you have is each other. He would say, you guys, and he would say, Jeff, Brian, Mark, Mark, Jeff, Brian. If you have siblings, you know how the parents can never get your names right. Wherever you go in life, whatever you do, wherever your travels take you, whatever struggles you have, you pick up that phone all the time and you call that brother and you ask that brother how he's doing and you tell that brother you love him. And I thought about that. It was a gift my father had instilled in us, this gift of love of family, this gift of brothers. And I couldn't lose that. And I had already begun to lose it, I know in my heart. Not because they didn't love me, because I had begun distancing myself from that love. They have families. They have children. I mean, they don't want somebody not in recovery, some drug addict hanging around them. I wouldn't want me hanging around them either. And so things happen, families distance. And I thought about that, and I couldn't allow that to happen. I couldn't just throw away that gift my father had given us all those decades before, the gift of brothers, the gift that his parents had given him. He was the middle of three brothers. And that was it. I couldn't do it. It was time. So that next day, I walked into my psychiatrist's office, who I've been lying to, just getting my antidepressants. Well, why would you lie to your psychiatrist? You're paying him. Shame knows no hourly rate, right? Didn't matter. I was ashamed. I was ashamed of my drug use. I was ashamed of my eating disorder. I was ashamed of my alcohol use. And now, believe me, I knew I had a problem. So I finally opened up to him about everything but the eating disorder. I didn't tell him about the eating disorder because I was still much too ashamed. That is a very stigmatized issue for men. It still is today. Although I did eventually open up to him. So he said, Brian, okay, we have a lot of things to cover, but we have a problem. We can't get to these things yet. I'm like, why? Well, you're a freaking drug addict and alcoholic, that's why. We have to get you sober. You have to get sober. We talked about rehab. I'm not going to rehab. I'm a lawyer. There's no lawyers in rehab, right? There are no lawyers in rehab. I'm not going to rehab. I have one case. I'm a busy lawyer too. I have one case, and that case needs me. That case is very important to me when I'm sober. I said, well, let's try this. There's a 12-step meeting going on right next door. Literally, it was right next door. Go on over there. Just leave right now and go over there. I'm not going over there. I see them outside smoking. They're starter bums. They're homeless people. There are no lawyers in there either. I walked in and half of them were lawyers I knew. But I'm not going there. He said, Brian, you may have a law degree, but you're not a lawyer. You're an addict. You stopped being a lawyer a long time ago. Woo! Profound. My shrink gets profound now and then. I missed that meeting because I kept milling around the outside of the door looking to see if there was anyone I knew. There was a deli next door doing a fake walk into the deli. Oh, no, I'm getting a Diet Coke. I'm not going in there. So after about an hour and a half, another meeting came around. And I walked down the halls and accepted my desire chip. And since that day, almost 10 years ago, I have not taken a drink. I have not done drugs. Was it easy? No. I had to overcome a lot of co-occurring disorders and deal with all of those all at once. There has been, at 12-step, there has been a lot of therapy, a lot of different kinds of therapy to make me feel better about who I am. There was repairing the relationship with my mother, and I did repair that relationship. My mother and I have a wonderful relationship. My mother stepped into my recovery. My mother sat down with me and we talked about how she was raised, what she went through, the toll she was given as a young mother in the 70s. And once I understood that, I realized that both scientifically, because it's not causation, and it just wasn't her fault. And once I realized that, I was able to let go of the anger. And once I was able to let go of the anger, I was able to forgive. I forgave my mom. I forgave the bullies. I get asked all the time, don't you want to confront those kids? I'm Facebook friends with a lot of those people that bullied me. Well, why are you Facebook friends? Don't you want to confront them? No, this isn't Maury Povich. I'm not the father. It's not a reality show. These are middle-aged men, not 15-year-old teenagers. I want them to be having happy lives. I want them to have raised wonderful children, hopefully having taught them differently than they were taught about bullying. It's kind of funny. I got a Facebook request from my drug dealer who delivered. I'm like, dude, hand-to-hand exchanges on the campus of SM University is not a friendship. I know we've expanded our definition of Facebook friendships, but that's not it. If you're coming to me in recovery, yes. Because in the recovery, everything is the past. And I'm there. I think he just had a new shipment in. I had to block him. I had to block him. And so today, with the love of my family, and if you want to know how that gift of love has taken hold, all these decades later, Mark, Jeff, myself, and my father all live within walking distance of each other in Dallas, Texas, 1,200 miles away. And I know everyone here may not have that. I get that, I understand. But I want to leave you with this. Family is not just about blood relatives. The gift of family is not just about brothers and sisters biologically. The gift of family is what everyone here in this room has with each other. The gift of family and love we have in this room allows us to create a village, and we have so much more than a village in this room. We have a freaking city. Look at this. So as you go through your journey at Oxford House, as you move on to wherever your ultimate travels will take you, never lose sight of the bonds in this room. Never lose sight of the gifts in this room. Never lose sight of that young lady who came up to me in that store, who didn't know me from Adam, and who wanted to tell me that I was accepted. Thank you.